Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to the next episode of Global Director Challenge. It's been a little while, but today's episode is The Americas. So, North America, South America, and Central America. Now, due to my ignorance, there might not be representations from every kind of Americas. But this is not just the United States of America, which, as we know, like the United Kingdom, it's a bit of an oxymoron. So we have a representation from South America and different parts of North America. This was difficult. But one of the things I decided to do, just to cheat, was none of the Golden Age immigrants from Europe before World War II are being counted as American. They will be in their own country. Obviously, there was quite a lot of very talented immigrants who came to America, came to Hollywood, and helped produce so much great work, but they are not going to be in the Americas list. They are going to be in their European country list. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. So there might be some surprises in here. Probably there's also maybe not so many surprises in here. But we'll start at number 10. And this is North America, but this is North America, from the wonderful country of Canada, and it's Atom Egoyan. Now, first got into Atom Egoyan in the early 90s. He's certainly a director who has the tale of two halves. His first career is almost on par with Cronenberg as far as just making really good, challenging films, and then the second half of his career he kind of went a little bit strange and did kind of erotic thrillers and things like The Devil's Knot, based on the Memphis killing of some small children. But in his later years, he's kind of come back to the sort of film that he kind of became famous for. So that's Exotica, obviously. And we have this Artificial Eye set, which has a bunch of his films as well. Next of Kin from 1984, Family Viewing from 1988, Speaking Parts from 1989. The Adjuster, which is his masterpiece as far as I'm concerned, from 1991. Calendar, which is really experimental, from 1993. Exotica, and The Sweet Hereafter, which again is one of his best films as well. So he's not for everybody. He has a particularly a kind of style, very much quite perverted, which we all admire. But I had to put Atom Egoyan on this list. And certainly Felicia's Journey, which is a wonderful film set in Liverpool, which you could almost put with Spider with Cronenberg. That really needs a Blu-ray. It's stuck in DVD. Bob Hoskins, one of Bob Hoskins' finest performances. Atom Egoyan I kind of had to put on this list. Now at number 9, which will be terribly low for some people, but I do think when you're younger, I I think this filmmaker is more important, and I think it's a bit of fatigue. Maybe a similar kind of vein with Tarkovsky, and it's Kubrick. Only at number 9 in my list. Obviously, he'll be near the top in other people's lists. Obviously, he has made great films, important films, but I think some of his films I could never see again, and it wouldn't really bother me, just because I've seen them so often. 2001 not being one of those. And here's a nice 4K set that I got at half price just because the cardboard was ripped. But this is Spartacus, 2001, Clockwork Orange, The Shining and Full Metal Jacket, all in 4K. Again, another filmmaker like Tarkovsky who didn't actually make that many films, but some of the most important films, the most copied films, or the most influential films of all time. But I think there's just a little bit of Kubrick fatigue for me, but he's still number 9. He can still hold his head up and be number 9. Now obviously for some people it would be utterly ridiculous to have the next filmmakers higher than Kubrick, but that's just the way this list has worked out. And it's the Coen brothers. Again, I wasn't going to put them in the list, but then if you look at their body of work, again, not for everybody, and you could say, well, they're style over substance. But again, their output is pretty impressive, including Miller's Crossing, which again, if you're not familiar with the channel, I think this film is literally perfect. And I think this is in the argument for my favourite film of all time. Just the language, the performances, the music, the production design, and as I said, it's literally perfect. Every frame is just absolutely perfect. Could do a 4K. And then one of their more underrated ones, The Man Who Wasn't There, with Billy Bob Thornton, James Gandolfini, Frances McDormand. Don't know how she got that part. Tony Shalhoub's fantastic as a shyster lawyer. An early performance of Scarlett Johansson, John Polito, of course, the regular, Richard Jenkins, shot by Roger Deakins. That is really beautiful. It's black and white. Yeah, again, I get the criticisms. They're style over substance. They've got no right being above Kubrick, but again, this is not the greatest 10 filmmakers from the Americas. This is just my favourite at the moment. Again, if you're not familiar with the rules, the top 5 ascend to the next round, and the bottom 5 go home and lick their wounds. So going home and licking his wounds at number 7 is Michael Mann. Again, a director that I was I going to put him in or was I not going to put him in, but I kind of have to. A lot of his films have been seminal in my film education, including Manhunter, which is the definitive Thomas Harris adaptation even. This is just glorious. I mean, there's been rumours of a 4K, but again, knowing the luck of the different versions of Manhunter, they'll probably do a 4K in the theatrical cut, which is the worst cut of the film. And of course, the film that everybody says is best, which is it's not really, but Heat. Will we see Heat 2, or will he take far too long to actually shoot Heat 2? But this is just wonderful. I saw this in the cinema twice. I saw Last of the Mohicans twice. Yeah, so Michael Mann, he is kind of important to me, so he's in at number 7. Number 6 is the South American entry in this list. Won't make the final cut, but again, a very important director and one of the somewhat unhinged member of the cinematic community. It's Jodorowsky from Chile. This is A Dance of Reality, one of his 2 autobiographical films that are just absolutely magnificent. This is probably the better out of the 2 of Endless Poetry, but it's not by much. yeah, he somehow gets away with it despite it just being completely barking, with his son playing his father and his grandson playing himself, and yeah, and the woman that plays his mother sings all her lines because his mum used to just go around the house singing all the time. Shouldn't work, but in the end it's actually quite moving. Jodorowsky's still going in his own strange little world. And then Santa Sangre, probably second best film behind Holy Mountain, I would say, and probably one that makes the most narrative sense if you want to actually work with narratives. Again, his son in one of the lead roles, just an amazing piece of work. And obviously there's Little People abounds. At number 5, so these are the 5 directors that are going to go through to the next round. Again, this might be a bit of a shock for people. Again, perhaps another director that people view as more style than substance, but I think they would be wrong. It's Richard Lester. This is The Bed Sitting Room, which is just a wonderful look at the apocalypse or post-apocalypse, with as many British comedy legends as you can shake a stick at. And then for me, his greatest work, How I Won the War. He did lots of wonderful different films. Robin and Marion is just arguably one of the greatest films about getting old and living up to the legend. Richard Lester always managed to have amazing casts. His casts are just ridiculous. Yeah, always kind of black comedy. Obviously didn't start, but he was kind of made famous with the Beatles films, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody because they're full of Beatles. But How I Won the War is just so wonderful. Again, not everybody's going to appreciate it, but I've absolutely loved it since the first time I saw it. At number 4, again, people complain about the films he didn't make, but we should treasure the films he did make, even though most of the films were messed with or cut, or it's a miracle that we have any of his films, to be honest. It's Orson Welles, one of the few people you could argue are genius level filmmakers. Obviously his ego sometimes got him into trouble. The myths about Welles sometimes might be even more incredible than the actual films he made. But the fact that, you know, he would make films, including this one, over a period of years and shoot wherever he could and then stuck it all together. The way he was treated by the studios is just ridiculous, but again, he didn't help himself at times. But considering the amount of great stuff he left behind, again, don't get too bogged down with the films he didn't make, and just cherish the films that he did make. That's Chimes at Midnight, and of course Touch of Evil, which is another film that has several cuts. Yes, it's Charlton Heston as a Mexican. Marlene Dietrich's wonderful, great dialogue, and Orson Welles himself gives one of his best King performances. Yeah, you can't not have Orson Welles, even though again his ego was cashing checks, his writing checks his body couldn't cash. At number 3, David Lynch, again another filmmaker that didn't make that many films. Obviously if you count Twin Peaks, especially The Return as a film, then that's a whopper. But yeah, I mean, can't imagine life without David Lynch films, or American cinema without David Lynch films. When you consider how influential Twin Peaks was, any television programme or film about a small community of quirky characters with dark secrets, I mean, it's all Twin Peaks, but it's never really been bettered. and his feature films, you know, you could be fair and sometimes say, you know, they reach self-parody at times. But he is one of those filmmakers who genuinely was guided by a muse. Obviously his collaborators like Badalamenti are top drawer as well. And he's the filmmaker who has the title for the greatest sound design in film. There's nobody close to the sound design that David Lynch achieved throughout his career. Again, a small filmography, but what a filmography. Yeah, again, not for everybody, but people who don't like David Lynch, don't get too close to those people. And then number 2, we're back to Canada, and no surprise, it's David Cronenberg. Again, people kind of judge Cronenberg on his early work and how, you know, he's a horror director, but I don't think he's ever been a horror director. He just used the genre for metaphor. I mean, he deals in metaphors a lot, but once he got out of the horror realm, again, I've never considered him a horror director really. There's nobody like Cronenberg. There's many imitators like Cronenberg. One of those guys that's always ahead of his time, and he'll never really be appreciated until his time is over. Just created so many great films. Again, not for everybody, which seems to be a common theme. But he's one of those guys in the later career, he's producing wonderful stuff. Can't wait to see The Shrouds, even though I'll try and temper my enthusiasm for it, even though I tried doing that with Crimes of the Future, and Crimes of the Future is absolutely wonderful, arguably the best film of 2023 or whenever it came out. Yeah, there's nobody like Cronenberg, and the great thing about him is he's unbelievably smart, but he never comes across as being a smart arse. Maybe that's because he's Canadian and not another nationality perhaps. Yeah, Cronenberg is just essential. Yes, there's films that I don't like as much as others, but he's always doing interesting stuff, and I think when people look back over his career, they'll realise how great he actually was, but again, not really appreciated in his lifetime. And then finally, you know who number one's going to be. Wasn't not going to be number one. It is, of course, John Sayles. And of course people will go, but Kubrick's better than Sayles, and it's like, yeah, but this is not a best of or best list. This is a favourites, and John Sayles, I absolutely adore John Sayles films. Again, people will laugh, but for me he is the greatest American writer director of the last 45 years, and it's not even close. I know Schrader would probably go in a huff with me, but John Sayles as a screenwriter is just incredible. He creates characters you want to spend the rest of your life with, not just 2 hours of a film with. He can write for anybody, race, colour, creed or sex, doesn't matter. His dialogue is always natural. He knows people don't have huge monologues and stuff like that, but he just speaks the truth, and that's why John Sayles is my favourite American director out of all the Americas: South America, Central America and North America. Sadly, as I said, due to my ignorance, there was no entries from Central America, even though I do like some Mexican filmmakers. But the number one is John Sayles. But you all knew that was going to happen anyway. So the 5 directors that go through to the next level: Richard Lester, Orson Welles, David Lynch, David Cronenberg and John Sayles. Apologies to people like Terrence Malick I haven't seen enough of his later films. I'll send an apology letter to him. There's plenty of other directors. Anthony Mann would be one of them as well. Didn't quite make it. Denny Arcon, who, thanks to Canadian International Pictures, I do like a lot of his films as well. Sidney J. Fury, the Canadian director, there's a wonderful imprint box set of his work. I think he's really underrated. Sam Fuller is always underrated, including by myself, but when you actually think about Sam Fuller's career, he made some tremendous films. There's just so many. Howard Hawks was probably 11th, but again, he just made too many films with John Wayne. No, I suppose somebody had to, but yeah, Howard Hawks was very close to making it, but due to my own perversities, I couldn't not have Atom Egoyan on the list. The Adjuster is such a seminal piece of work for me. Indeed, Are You In or Are You Out? So thanks very much for watching. The Americas, quite a big bit of land to cover. The next top 10 will be Asia, not including Japan and Korea, because they have their own lists, if you want to go and check that out in the playlist. So it's Asia, but not Japan and Korea, so you can get your thinking caps on for that 10. So this is Saul Sharonan from Saul Sharonan Films saying thanks very much for watching, and hopefully you'll join me for the next episode of Global Director Challenge. Cheerio.